Today we got some absolutely explosive news for the PC hardware space, and this is a partnership between Intel and Nvidia. Started with this tweet from Intel CEO Lip Bhutan saying, "Excited to team up with my good friend Jensen to jointly develop multiple generations of custom data center and PC products. Our collaboration brings together the best of Intel and Nvidia to benefit customers and shows how vital x86 architecture and NVLink will be in shaping the future of AI infrastructure and personal computing. Looking forward to speaking with you at 10 a.m. Pacific today." And then there was some links to specific articles from Nvidia and Intel. One thing really big to note here is that Nvidia is to invest $5 billion in Intel common stock. So that's already going to help out on like the stock price end for Intel. Their finances and stock prices and all that have been, under question with the struggles they've been having. But also this raised some questions about, wait a second, Intel and Nvidia pairing up, they're developing not just the AI data center stuff, but also computing products. Because, well, obviously this is a big deal in the data center market where honestly, AMD, Nvidia, Intel make huge amounts of their money. And that could be a big deal for AMD in like the CPU side of things if they're, supplying, AMD CPUs in data center space. And maybe if Intel's partnering up with Nvidia to match up there, that could be, a big thing there. But my channel is more focused on the PC gaming side of things, where Intel has, been trying to break into the GPU market, which, I think could desperately use strong additional competition. This suddenly brings a lot of that into question. So I immediately went searching out to see if Intel had made any direct statement regarding the future of their Intel Arc GPUs. Their initial announcements didn't seem to have anything, but I did eventually find this article from PC World where they did manage to get some direct quotes from Intel on this topic. But let's see what the actual quote is. Because again, they say Intel says blockbuster NVIDIA deal doesn't change its own roadmap. But we do want to read the quote carefully. So the direct quote here is, "We're not discussing specific roadmaps at this time, but the collaboration is complementary to Intel's roadmap, and Intel will continue to have GPU product offerings." Now, this is potentially very carefully worded, okay? Intel will continue to have GPU product offerings does not necessarily mean that Intel will just is committed to continuing future new GPU architectures that they haven't already worked on. I think it's important to note. But they are saying the collaboration is complementary to Intel's roadmap. Now, Intel already has roadmaps with their own GPU architectures, in tiles on their, mobile CPUs, and they, have their own, desktop CPUs out there, desktop GPUs out there. But again, if they start to put NVIDIA graphics chips on Intel CPUs, like in the mobile space, for example, I think it really does call into question whether it makes sense long-term for Intel to continue Arc GPU development. Because, it was very clear that the discrete desktop GPUs for, gaming products weren't, at least currently, financially making sense. And Intel's new CEO has been very clear that projects that aren't, worth it monetarily wise aren't in favor at the company right now. Lots of things getting cut. So with that in mind, there's the question of the Arc GPUs. Well, as long as Intel needs integrated graphics for their CPUs, especially in like laptop products, etc., they have a huge amount of the actual GPU market share when you look at integrated GPUs. So it made sense, I think, for them to be developing Arc GPU, like justifying the R&D cost if it also benefited their integrated graphics. But if they're now going to be integrating NVIDIA GPUs into their CPUs, does that R&D continue to make sense to develop their own, their own space there, right? Now, I mean, from Intel's perspective, you might want to have your own product, like long term, and not be completely dependent on Nvidia. But at the same time, this really does bring some of that into question. So I think we really need to see how this plays out in the long term, because I do think that while this statement can be read as them saying everything's fine with Intel Arc GPUs, that isn't actually what it says, right? So I think we'll have to see how this plays out. I'm sure they already have products in development that probably make sense to continue along with. But at what point do they stop development on future generations, new architectures, if the plan is to rely on NVIDIA graphics? This also brings up just questions on, like, right now AMD has been pretty dominant in like the mobile, like handhelds and things like that in the PC side of things. But if they start to get NVIDIA graphics in there, we'll have to see how powerful they are. On Intel chips, it potentially could flip some of that on its head with what makes sense, for gaming handhelds. If Nvidia gets, DLSS upscaling in there, ray tracing, maybe it's performant. I mean, we've seen with the Switch 2 that like even old, 30 series generation Nvidia GPU that's not particularly powerful even for then and running at an extremely low wattage, was able to even do, ray tracing in Star Wars Outlaws, for example, that just got a decent Switch 2 port. Certainly not amazing frame rates or anything, but we've certainly seen that NVIDIA's even older architectures can deliver something impressive in the mobile space. So I don't know, this is a really big deal that we'll have to see how this plays out, because this could shake up a lot of stuff. Are we still going to have Arc GPUs? Is AMD going to be the dominant, mobile APU format? Like, could be big changes. Wanted to make sure we got a news video out about it. There's some other stories to talk about as well, though. We actually have AMD launching a Radeon RX 7700. If you're like, wait, wasn't there one of those already? There was a 7700 XT, and it had 12 gigabytes of memory. This is a 7700 non-XT, and it has 16 gigabytes of memory. That's certainly interesting. It's listed on AMD's website now, and since it's getting such a silent launch, and it doesn't seem to have any kind of pricing listed, that would indicate this is probably designed for system integrators, like pre-built systems. So maybe we won't be seeing these on the, do-it-yourself, buy just the GPU, put it in your system kind of market. We'll have to see. AMD did provide some performance numbers, and videocards.com has helpfully looked at how that compares to numbers they've given out in these same games, which we would presume it's testing in a similar manner, on cards like the 7700 XT version, where, the 7700 is certainly performing lower. So despite having more VRAM, it's not as performant unless VRAM became a concern, and it's certainly much less powerful than the 16 gigabyte 7800 XT. So you would hope that this would make, sense from a pricing perspective. Nice to see the 16 gigabytes of VRAM. My main issue with the 7000 series right now getting another product is there's no official FSR4 support, and that's a really big deal right now. Now, we have seen, like I covered in my news video yesterday, that FSR4 support is unofficially available now, at least a version of FSR4 that can run on, the previous generations. And AMD has mentioned, maybe Redstone could apply to other GPU architectures. So maybe towards the end of this year or the beginning of next year, we'll actually get FSR4 support, or at least some version of it that is better than the current non-machine learning based FSR3 upscaling that runs on the 7000 series. Maybe we'll get some expansion there, because otherwise I don't think it makes a lot of sense to continue expanding the 7000 series if it doesn't get the machine learning based upscaling support. Anyway, it's nice to see that this has the 16 gigabytes of VRAM. It certainly has a lot fewer cores than the 7700 XT, which has 3456. This has 2560. This does have a little bit faster memory, so that could help out a bit. And it does have the wider memory bus at 256-bit versus 192, and it has this larger memory capacity at 16. It's interesting. The performance gap seems to be 16 to 19% according to Videocards.com's analysis of the AMD published numbers. But to be clear, it doesn't seem like anybody has a review sample of this at this time. And like I said, it might just be limited to pre-built systems. There doesn't seem to be any kind of indication of pricing or availability on the DIY market. AMD also has a new driver available, 25.9.2. This looks like a beta driver and is offering support for Dying Light the Beast, which launched today, and for the RX 7700. So both of those coming today. Are you guys interested in benchmarking, testing out Dying Light the Beast? Because I could potentially find some time to do that. Rather busy today, but might be able to slip something in, get you a video out, maybe testing out some, either its system requirements on those kind of hardware, or at least like reasonable hardware. What does the 3060 do? That kind of a thing. Anyway, let's also mention that it looks like Microsoft's new Xbox mode for Windows, which is designed for their upcoming ROG Ally handheld device, has been leaked, and you can go through some steps to install it on other devices. Now, this is pretty interesting because this would, I think, potentially, and hopefully it gets developed on and improved, make the gaming handheld experience a lot better on Windows-based devices, since you can boot directly into this launcher that they've now integrated the like Steam and other platforms into it, so you can launch your Steam games from here. And it also actually saves you some system memory by not running things like basically the Windows Explorer. Now, you can still choose to launch into desktop mode, but if it boots into this by default and isn't running that in the background, you do gain some memory space, etc. So there's some advantages to this. And again, all my sources will be linked in the video description if you want to follow up on anything in further detail. Now, since I mentioned Steam, I'll also mention that Steam has now posted that their Windows 32-bit OS support is going to be stopped as of January 1st, 2026. Now, Steam is saying that according to their Steam hardware survey, only 0.01%, so 1 out of every 1,000 systems in the Steam hardware survey, are actually on a 32-bit OS version. So this is not going to affect a huge number of people. And they're also saying that existing Steam client installations will continue to function. It's not going to just instantly stop working on January 1st, but it won't be receiving updates of any kind, including security updates. They won't offer technical support for issues, and you would just eventually expect Steam to just break down as it's no longer getting updated or anything, or any kind of support. So if you're still one of the 1 out of every 1,000 people apparently who are on the 32-bit version of Windows, just be aware that that's upcoming. Now, I also want to mention that Borderlands has now officially made a statement indicating they are interested in working on performance concerns. Their CEO should probably allow the marketing and PR people to make these kinds of statements without, putting his foot in his mouth. But anyway, we are getting a statement about this, basically saying that they've been reading every piece of feedback, and they've already began to take some actions. They know some PC players are running into bugs and crashes. We hear you. Updates to improve stability and performance already started rolling out over the weekend, and another is coming this Thursday, which is today, and saying that this is their top priority. Now, they kind of lump crashes and stability in with performance, but they are specifically mentioning performance. Again, though, I am curious how much can be done with the performance, because if way back in the design phase of the game, they determined they were going to rely on extremely heavy features like Lumen and Nanite as the core game design, some of those do just have a fixed performance cost. Like once you choose to use that, there's only so much scalability available. I do hope they can at least improve things like their shader compilation steps, because like really you shouldn't just have stuttering extensively for your first couple hours of gameplay, which smooths out as you've encountered more of those stutters. So anyway, I'm hoping they can at least make the experience a bit better. We'll have to see what can come performance-wise. Now, let's end with a few GPU deals I happened to spot. I did notice that the RTX 5070 is once again below MSRP at $524. I think you might need to be an Amazon Prime member to get this deal, but this deal is available. Now, it's not massively below MSRP at $550, which is $550, but it's at least below its normal price. Again, if you can hold off another few months, if you haven't bought one already, we are expecting to see a 5070 Super, which would be a bit faster and have 18 gigabytes of VRAM if the rumors pan out and actually happen, right? Leaks and rumors, nothing official. So I wouldn't rush out and buy one right now if you don't need one, but if you need a GPU and you were looking at the $500 price point, AMD GPUs are still above that, like the 9070 is still closer to $600 on the less expensive models. That being said, if you're looking at a lower price point, I did spot the 9060 XT 16 gigabyte version, which had crept up above its MSRP for a while, does now have an MSRP model at $350 on Newegg. And again, that is the 16 gigabyte version. It's the Power Color Reaper, so it's not like the highest end cooler design or anything, but it is hitting its MSRP price again, which we hadn't seen for a couple of months now, I think. And then also, I've seen that the 9070 XT version has been coming down a little bit in price. For a while, $700 would be about the lowest I could find it, at least staying in stock for any reasonable amount of time. But I am now seeing the Steel Legend version down to $669.99, which is pretty nice to see. Now, it's still not $599.99, which is the MSRP, so it's still got a ways to go. I have a feeling that if NVIDIA's super products do end up panning out, that's probably going to be the motivator for AMD to actually finally get down to MSRP on their products. Once NVIDIA just, especially if the supers come in at the MSRPs of the non-super versions, I think AMD really would be pressured to get those prices down a bit. Still, at this point, it's still a less than $100 gap to get the 5070 Ti, which I think a lot of people would still choose to do, but the closer we get to MSRP, the better, and I did want to mention that it is coming down. Hopefully you guys found today's video useful and or interesting. Again, let me know if you are interested in Dying Light the Beast. Should I get to benchmarking? I hope all of you have an excellent day.